Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, silly, strange, and sublime aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the go-to parent, aren't always accepted at work, among their friends, or in the community for what they're doing. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. Our podcast is just one of the many things we produce each week at the Company of Dads. We have various features, including the Lead Dad of the Week. We have our community, both online and also with some in-person events. We have a new resource library for all fathers. The one-stop shop for all of this is our newsletter, The Dad. So sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Today, my guest is Blessing Adesiyan, the founder and CEO of WorkLife, formerly known as Mother Honestly. She's also the executive director of two nonprofits, WorkLife Equity and WorkLife Africa. A mother of four, Blessing comes to this work with an engineering background, having worked at large established companies like Pepsi, Cargill, DuPont, and BASF. In 2018, she started WorkLife, at first in parallel with her job at BASF, but at the end of 2020, in the midst of COVID, she went full on with this incredible venture. Welcome, Blessing, to the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
How did the idea come about for, what was then Mother Honestly, which is now WorkLife? How did it come about back in 2018?
So, Paul, what we were doing back then, so my career obviously is in manufacturing, and I was working for the largest chemical company. I was a woman. I was a Black woman. I was an immigrant. I was a single mother that had recently, remarried, and I just had my baby. And I finally decided, to really rethink how I show up at work. Because up until then, I only had one child, and she was already 9. It was a little bit easier, right? A 9-year-old can brush their teeth, change their own clothes. But now I had a baby, and my husband also had a very demanding career. And it became very clear that we needed to effectively combine our work and family. And that was how Mother Honestly came to be, because my idea back then was, how do we do this honestly, right? How do we do our careers honestly? How do we manage our homes honestly without looking at what other people are doing, right? Because back then, I don't know if you remember, this was in the beginning of social media. We were all comparing ourselves,
Sure.
On social media. There was a lot of comparison and competition. And I wanted to sort of, bring that energy into the workplace and say, hey, we need to stop comparing ourselves. Let's actually just focus on getting our work done and being the best parents that we can be. So that was the idea back then. And it's still in so many ways the idea now.
But was there a moment when your second child arrived and you said, okay, I got to figure something out differently? Because that in and of itself is remarkable, because most people soldier on without thinking, what's the solution to this problem? But you, maybe because you have this engineering mind, you thought, okay, how do I solve this problem? Was there a moment when child number 2 arrived? Yeah.
So this was Daycomi is now 5.5. So Daycomi was 4-month-old, and I would never forget, I was breastfeeding him, and my husband walks in and requested for his dinner, and I said, "What? Go get your own dinner, right? Go check the fridge. I haven't been able to make anything." And he said, "Whoa, because normally, right, we like I said, we had a 9-year-old, so already by the time he comes home, food is ready." And I said, "Wait a minute, is this how it's gonna be now? Like, he's gonna walk in, and I'm gonna have to have had dinner made, all 2 kids in bed." I just started looking at myself and traveling, and back then I was traveling almost every other weekend. And so I started, rethinking how I was going to return to the workplace. And so actually, let me give you a funny story. Because while I was breastfeeding, I then started writing on a Post-it note just right next to me. I said, what will it take for women to effectively combine work and family, and for women to be respected at home and in the workplace? Because, quite frankly, I felt disrespected, right? When somebody walks in, I'm breastfeeding, And it's like, where's my dinner? And I'm like, what is going on? So that was one. And then two, I said, ooh, this is literally what cuts across, right? From the household to the workplace, where women go from that exact position to the workplace where they are equally disrespected, right? Because now you have a baby, or now you have two babies. Well, of course you can't, gone for that promotion anymore. Of course you can't do X, Y, and Z. So I wrote on a post-it note, what will it take? And that post-it note just kept getting longer and longer. And again, the age of Instagram, I just opened a brand new shiny Instagram account. So I posted all of my thoughts on Instagram. And I said, if anybody wants to meet up, I'm happy to meet up for coffee tomorrow. I posted the location of the coffee shop next to the house. And Paul, I went to bed that night and my phone kept doing cha-ching. So my husband was like, ooh, you've been watching all sort of shows since you're home. I don't know why everyone thinks that when a woman is home,
right,
breastfeeding, that they're actually on vacation or chilling, right? And I said, so I put everything back. I placed my phone back on do not disturb, right? And I fell asleep. Well, by the time I woke up, that little post was already reshared about maybe 500 times. And this was when there was no algorithm. You have to remember, people, like, things caught on fire very quickly. And by the next day, I couldn't retract, right, where I wanted people to meet. And this was Detroit, Michigan. We were living in one of the suburbs, Beverly Hills. And when I got to the coffee shop, there was no parking. So I thought, I shouldn't have picked this coffee shop, right? If I knew there was no parking. Walked in, there was no seating. So people were standing around. And as soon as I walked in, everybody pointed at me, that's her. So the owner of the coffee shop comes in and said, you should have booked this place. You don't just put this stuff on your social media. And he just went on. And, and then later when he just busted out laughing, he said, well, we've sold out on all of our croissants. We've sold out on all of our coffee. You guys can just have the place. And I literally stood there and had a conversation. That was literally how we were able to have the largest conference for working mothers in America 3 months later, because over 100 people were in that coffee shop. And the conversation was, how do we get women to return to work with confidence and resilience? And how do we help women survive the crushing burden of care? And that was the conversation. And 3 months later, I'll never forget, Dickomy was 4 months old. So that was around May. And by October 2018, we booked the largest conference center in Detroit. And we had over 50 companies send their working mothers to that conference. And that was the day, literally, one of the moms is a lawyer. So she came in and she was like, well, this is where you sign for the LLC, because I don't think you want to mix all of this expenses, right, with your personal income. So that was how we started. And, MH has grown tremendously ever since, because our North Star is, how do we reimagine care for today's workforce? Because obviously what we are doing isn't working. Everyone is being crushed, right, with cooking, cleaning, running errands, and trying to place food on the table, right? You have to work for that money, and it's intense, and it takes a lot out of all of us. And I joke with Eve Rodsky a lot, right, that even when we divide the work equally, it's still too much for two people that are working. And so a lot of time, how do we make sure that the workplace is conducive for those people? And how do we make sure that the home is also conducive for us as parents and as caregivers?
Yeah. So clearly in that moment, you took your personal experience, but you tapped into a rich vein. You tapped into this vein of, to get 100 people overnight to show up at a coffee shop in suburban Detroit. I mean, that's remarkable. It goes on to the conference. But that's all things that in a way that companies can understand. Like, oh, okay, we will send our working moms to this conference. We will pay for their hotel and their airfare, and they will be there. And then, I don't want to be cynical, but that's pretty much what we'll do. But whatever, companies are thinking differently in 2018 and 2019 than they did than they have since the pandemic. So then we fast forward to the fall, it seemed, of 2020. We're 6 months into the pandemic. Nobody really knows what's going on. We've all kind of figured out that we're going to be working from home for a while. Those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to do that. But what was it in that moment of, that was an in extremis, situation. Nobody's sending anybody to a conference anymore. Nobody's flying around to meet. It's hard to sort of, have a conversation, but you were having a conversation in 2018 about, going to the office, being at home type of balance. Now you're like always in the home, no balance, tremendous stress. Oh, and now I'm an educator as well. What was that moment where you said, you know what? I've had a great run as an engineer. I've been very successful with these manufacturing companies, but I need to take that leap. I need to leave that behind and put all of my energy into MH.
Absolutely. I don't know if you recall, Paul, but during the pandemic, we were all doing too much. People like you and
Oh, I recall.
We
I definitely recall.
we were not only taking care of our own homes and making sure that our children, obviously, were fine, and our family were fine, but we were also catering to, the community that we built. And so at that time, the Mother Honestly community really needed me. We were having Zoom calls every day. So we had what we called, I think it was lunch hour or something, where, during lunchtime, whether the babies were crying, because remember, people had things in the background, children throwing pots and pans and, husbands, on their laptops. There was so many things in the background. And we said, it's okay. Just at 12 o'clock every day, just dial into the Zoom link and we just chat. And if you don't feel like talking, you just want to feel like you can see someone, you can talk to someone about how you're feeling, that's fine. So we did that every day, I think for like 4 months straight. Okay. And we were still holding events. We had events back to back to back. And the one, what really then pushed me out of the workforce was when George Floyd died. And George Floyd had passed away, and we were back on Zoom, and I had logged into my work computer, and I was pumping. So this was my third child now, and I'm pumping, logging into my laptop, and we had a work meeting. And usually, because I'm in manufacturing, a lot of our work meeting started with a safety, let's talk about safety, right? And the safety, I thought we were going to talk about, this was the Monday after George Floyd died. So I thought we were going to at least acknowledge what had happened, and we were going to go, talk about it a little bit before we started the conversation. And, I logged on, and right on my screen was dog safety. And, we talk about dogs, and I love dogs. But I felt like that was a little bit, not appropriate. And, I sent an email to, somebody in the workplace saying, hey, these are, these are leaders. And I said, we need to rethink how we are approaching this. Let's look at, ways that we can rectify this, right? And they said, whatever, you are always supporting parents and caregivers and this and that. And, they felt like it just fell on the wayside.
Yeah.
And it's no, I don't think I don't think they did anything bad, right? Because you can't fault a company based on one person, a manager that decided to talk about dog safety, right? But that somehow kicked me in the behind, because I didn't realize that we are basically in a workplace that has not evolved to truly care about people, and to truly care about their humanity. To truly care about, this person has 2 kids, this person has 3 kids, this person is divorced, this person is going through a separation, they just lost their parent. How can we build infrastructure to support those people? How can we build infrastructure to support the most vulnerable workers, like Black women, like Latinos, like immigrants? So that little, whole dog safety conversation, I just left my laptop. I think I cried because I was not expecting that. I literally was expecting, and so I left the meeting, and literally went back to my laptop and I started typing my resignation letter. And I'll never forget, my husband walks in and says, he looked at me and he looked at the screen and he said, he literally said, "Is it time?" I said, "Yes, it's time." We never had a conversation about, oh my God, you're gonna, all that
Right.
money. I mean, I was the global supply operations manager for, our largest steam cracker, hydrocarbon unit. And it was a big role that I worked my behind off to get, and I, left that role overnight. And so for me, it just became very clear that I needed to get out of the system and really take all the learnings and use that to fuel, the next phase of Mother Honestly, which is why as soon as we came out of that, we pivoted into MH WorkLife, and we kept the MH because, I really want us to always remember that we were, Mother Honestly, even though we've designed it now for everyone, it was really built by mothers. It was built from the pain and the cries of mothers in the workplace for a better workplace. And so, we sort of pivoted, right, or expanded our mission to ensure that we are not talking to mothers, because what I realized that we were spending a lot of time talking to mothers. And I said, well, the solution doesn't lie with moms. The solution lies with the workplace. The solution lies with men. If we can get men to step into care, if we can get the workplace to care more, then we don't even need to say, oh, look at us working moms, because the workplace is already caring for everyone. And so that was one of the reasons why we expanded our mission, and now we are MH WorkLife, and our, North Star mission is to build care infrastructure for today's workforce and help us reimagine a world where, instead of us gunning for, the next C corporation, can we rethink, can we look at and draw inspiration from caring corps, right? Caring corporations that are leading with compassion and leading with care. So that's what we do now. And I'm just super excited about where we're going, where we're headed, and, the millions of people that we already impact on a daily basis.
You talked about the need to, get out of the system, but you're almost like one of those classic sort of double agents, like somebody who worked for MI6 and, the old Soviet Union or something like that, because you know how it works. And how have you used that knowledge of how the system was working until COVID to sort of help companies realize, look, here's some low-hanging fruit. Don't push back on me. Don't send me to the person in HR who has no power to do this. Here are some things that your company can do that will set you ahead of your competitors, but also have a positive impact on caregivers. Both moms and dads, we focus on that, but also caregivers in general, those people who have a sick spouse, those people who have a sick parent. What are some of the things that you encourage, companies to do quickly to rectify it?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I learned, especially when I was in corporate America, was that HR has no power. And so now I don't even waste my time going to HR, because at the end of the day, care is not an HR issue. It is not an HR issue. Care is really a business issue. And so we need to be talking to executives. We need to be talking to marketing. We need to be talking to those people that really understand that if you don't become a caring corporation, you are more than likely not going to be in business in the next 20 years, because the upcoming generations are not going to sit down and work for 10 hours straight without you saying, whoa, great job. How can I support you? They are not going to do that. They will rather dance on TikTok and make money. So we need to be very clear, right? So those are the things that I'm bringing. Even with MH WorkLife, we don't go directly to HR anymore. We go to marketing, because first of all, marketing has the budget. When was the last time HR people gave you money, right? The marketing folks, they are the ones that understand the positioning, of the company. They want the company to be positioned as a caring company, as a company that does well. So we go to them. They have the budget to help us advance our mission. So that is one. The other one is really looking at because we understand the employee perspective really, really well, especially because when I was in the 4 different Fortune 100 companies that I worked at, I led and even started multiple employee resource groups. So I knew how employee resource groups work. And I knew that employee resource groups are one of the biggest engine for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're also the biggest engine to help a company become a caring company. I'm going to give you an example. We work at a very amazing company called Indeed. Mm-hmm. And when we started working with the Caregivers ERG group, they provided 8 weeks of parental leave to men, and I think it's 16 weeks to women, the birthing parent. And we started working with the employee resource, the parents and caregivers group, and just through conversations, right? Somehow we got the CEO involved and the benefits leader involved and the marketing people involved, and we said, how do we redo this?
Yeah.
Right? Because care is not a woman's issue. When we give a woman 16 weeks and we give the dad 8 weeks, we're basically sending the message that that the child is for the mom to figure out and not for the dad. And so we said, let's figure this out together. And they took that conversation. We worked very closely with the leader of the ERG group, and she took it upon herself. We gave her all the ammunition she needed to present a better business case, right? And now Indeed has 26 weeks of gender neutral parental leave for anyone in the workplace. It doesn't matter if it's adoption. It doesn't matter if you had the baby. It does not matter. And so those are the ways that, we have figured out a way, sort of a back end, right? Because we know that, going through, even when companies purchase a benefit package, not everyone have access to those benefit package. So when I see so many people, this is the benefits for this, for that, it's going to help parents. Well, not everyone, believe it or not. And it's one of the reasons why we started WorkLife Equity. When you ask companies like Bright Horizons, Care.com, ask them who in the workplace is using these benefits. And they would tell you, mostly white women. Black women are not using it. Latino women are not using it. Immigrants are not using it. Even white men are not using those benefits, right? Because it's not clear. It's not clear how to even access those benefits. And so we said, let's go through the back end. Let's walk through people. Instead of walking through benefits, we walk through people, because the people are the ones that are going through the pain points. And so they're able to sell anything better than any HR person or any benefit provider. And by selling, even if it's a policy change that we provide, or even just conversations, like we don't even have a product sometimes. We just talk to companies who are like, you know what, let's just understand what you all do. Let's just talk. And they'll tell us, we even provide this for our members. We give them, 2 days off. There was a company that was really excited. I said, we have unlimited paid leave. And I said, what does that mean? Right. Well, you can I said, no, we're not gonna. So we started walking through, having conversations, and they were able to very quickly redefine their paid leave policy to be very clear on, what's the minimum that you have to take, and make it mandatory, so that, women are not the only ones taking their parental leave or any other, paid leave available to them, that men are also taking that as well. So those are the little ways that, some of the things that we have learned, that I learned while I was in corporate America, and saying, okay, how do we use that as a tool to engage with the workplace?
When you think about that example with Indeed, I can imagine that at the time they thought, well, 8 weeks for fathers to take time off, that's probably pretty good. And compared to some of their peers, it is pretty good.
It's amazing. It's still an amazing package today.
Right, but it's one of those things that we talk a lot about this at the company, Dads. That companies, I don't believe companies want to do the wrong thing by their employers or by their employees. They often just don't know what they're doing. And so once you explain it to them, once you say like, okay, well, here's this dynamic, why does the father have 50% less time off than the mother? Oh, I don't know. Well, what if you want them to be equal? How are you going to do this? And once you sort of explain it, it's powerful. I mean, another thing we talk about, when you talk about bringing, fathers in, and, I think you're obviously spot on, like unlimited paid leave is the worst policy ever because people don't take it. And then you have macho people like, well, I haven't taken anything, or how come you've taken 3 days this year? I haven't taken any. And so one of the things we advocate for is getting dads to parent publicly, or parent loudly is another way to put it, to make sure they put in their calendars, not just out of the office. They put in, I'm going to, do X with my daughter, X with my son, X with my, spouse or partner. We have a lot of examples where when senior people do this, it has a remarkable impact on the more junior employees. Because why? Because those more junior employees can now see that people who have had some level of success, within that company are taking leave, and therefore they're modeling.
Absolutely.
When you think about, the things that from your conversations that, employees, whatever level they may be, that employees want from their companies, but are afraid to ask for. They're afraid to ask for these things because it may make them look not like the model worker. It may make them look not sufficiently committed or dedicated to their job. What are some of those things, for the companies that are listening? What are some of those things that those employees are afraid to ask for, but they should ask for them, and companies should listen?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of time, what employees are actually asking for has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with benefits. It has, think about it, even in your marriage, right? In your relationship, the things that your partner probably values the most is not anything materialistic. It's not the new shiny thing you buy, right? It is that you acknowledge them, that you say thank you, that you say please, that you reward and recognize them from time to, and it doesn't have to be anything huge, and so for me, I think that if there's one thing that I think that a lot of employees need, it is honestly reassurance. It is care. It is you just showing that you care. And to break it down even further, I think it's having leaders that care. So we have a summit coming up in New York, and one of the conversations that we're going to be having is leading with care, the new rules of work, which is the same way, Paul, you and I, when we got on this call, we did not jump straight into the podcast. We've been talking about we've been talking about napping, we've been laughing, but before we even went into the podcast, can you imagine if you're just like, listen, let's just go to the podcast? And that is exactly what companies do. You go into a meeting and the next thing, okay, the report, let's go into page 1. All right, bring up the spreadsheets. No one is even taking the time to say, how are you doing? And it only takes 5 minutes. People already get a paycheck. I think we need to be clear on that. People already get a paycheck. They're not looking for companies to continue throwing, various, kind of benefits at them. But they're looking for compassionate leadership. They're looking for a leader that is able to show that they care about them. They're looking for a workplace that shows that they are considerate of their employees. So for example, this is back to school season. 5 minutes is all it takes. How is everyone doing?
Yep.
We're all back to school. I understand it might be, a choppy week. Some people might need to, break their working hours, into mornings and evenings. Whatever you need to do, let me know. If you need more time, let me know. Please share any updates that you have. Just really checking in for 5 minutes. And you will be so surprised that even by incorporating something as simple as that, we would have knocked out a lot of the stress, a lot of the bad energy, because that's what I call it. And you know what I'm talking about. When you go into a conference room and it's just, everybody's just like, whatever, we're going in there again. We're going to go talk, we're going to go get hammered. But if we lead with care and we lead with compassion, then we would have at least, broken down all the negative energy, all the bad energy. And people know that you're coming, even when you demand more of them, they know you're coming from a place of compassion. They know that you respect the work and that you value the work. In addition to caring for them, the work still needs to be done. It's not a pass. Just because I asked you how you're doing does not mean I'm going to say, oh, by the way, it's okay for the reports to not be done when we agreed that it should be done. Because the same way I am extending compassion to you as my employee is the same way you need to extend compassion to me as the manager who has, whatever metrics, right? You are responsible for something. And so you need to meet your own timelines. But if we can just lead with care, I think that we can start to really get ahead of all of this bad energy. I don't know if you've seen the latest reports by ADP that says that American workers are the most unmotivated right now. They're not as motivated as they used to be. And I think, I want to guess that part of it is because we just don't care anymore. And a lot of us, you just said it, a lot of us are working remotely, right? And so what happens when you're working remotely? You're lonely, you're isolated, and now nobody even cares. Nobody's even asking you how you're doing. So you're kind of like, okay, I guess I'm a robot.
Right. Yeah.
And that leads to stress, and it leads to burnout, and it leads to, feelings of anxiety and depression and so on and so forth. And so for me, I think the one thing you can do is to lead with care. Lead with care. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost a dime. It can be something as simple as a culture change at work.
One of the things we do with our weekly meeting at the Company of Dads is we spend 5 minutes at the start and we ask everyone to talk about something personal and something professional. And we leave it at that. And it could be something super positive, but we've had some people who talked about some stuff that's been a struggle. And, I thought that was pretty clever until my 11-year-old came home from her first day of 6th grade the other day, and she reorganized our nightly dinner conversation. And she said, I want everyone to tell me something negative that happened to them today and then something positive. And the only rule is you have to do the negative one first, so you end on the positive. She came up with, I don't know if they talked about it in school, I don't know, but this was, and I was like, that was really good, because we had done this thing for, off and on for a year. You talk about gratitude, and sometimes you're not grateful for anything, and that's okay. You don't have to be grateful every day. We'd like them to, but like pairing it that way, so you got what was, on your mind, off your mind, and then it forced you to also think of something, positive. When you think, you're doing so much, and when this runs, your new website will have been, relaunched. You've come up with some really great solutions. One of them that I like, that fascinates me, is the WorkLife wallet. Explain how the WorkLife wallet works for both companies and employees.
So the WorkLife wallet is also my favorite product. And when we came up with the idea of the wallet, there were so many benefits. Like I said, people were throwing, a lot of money at what we thought was the problem, right? Let's just, another benefits, which are all great benefits. But what we realized was that those benefits were inequitable. And I'm going to give you an example. When I was an engineer at Parkersburg, West Virginia, and I had a benefit which was a backup childcare. And they said, well, it's going to be $12 copay, or I think it was $16 copay whenever I traveled, because I used to travel for work. They said, it's, the company already paid for 80 hours for me, but it's going to be $16 copay for the person to come into my house and be dedicated to my child, which is, reasonable, because, if you're going to hire a full-time nanny at that point, you're looking at $40, $50 an hour. So they said that, and I said, no, thank you. Like, I'm not going to take that. And my manager was looking at me like, are you okay? I said, I don't have the money for that. And he said, well, we pay you really well. I said, well, you pay me really well, but my paycheck is really not my paycheck. I have 5 siblings back in Nigeria that I put to college. I am a single mother. I'm an immigrant. I'm not like you. I don't even have a credit card, because I can't get a credit card because I just, moved to this country 5 years ago, and it's been so hard to get a credit card with, low interest rates.
Credit history, yeah.
And so, we just went through so many things, and it was like, ooh, we have never thought about this, right? No wonder a lot of Black people do not take advantage of this backup childcare. So the company actually go back and look at the people that were taking advantage of the backup childcare. And lo and behold, not one single Black woman, not one single Black family. And this is still happening now. In fact, I spoke to the head of inclusion for women of color at Google, and she said, I have never used that backup childcare. I think it's too expensive. But a lot of other people may not think it's too expensive because to them it's like, great, this is great quality. I'm going to be out of the country, $16 an hour. This is nothing. But to me, it was not nothing, right? So that was an example of why we decided to go with the WorkLife wallet, because the WorkLife wallet is very straightforward, right? You get access to X amount of funds that your company has provided to you. So just as an example, the company could say, we have $100,000 for all of our employees, which means our 500 employees each get $200 per month or $50 per month in their wallet. Now that fund can be used for anything care related. So it could be used for childcare, elder care, household management, housekeeping. I need to pay for lunch because, I am working all day from home and the company has provided lunch to those in the office and not me. You can use your WorkLife wallet for those things. You can use it for yoga sessions, whatever brings you joy, whatever is accessible to you. But at least you have that cash. Because can you imagine, my company is already paying this company X amount of dollars anyways for something that I'm not even using.
Yep.
And as a parent, I really needed that benefit, but I couldn't use it because, well, it was outside my range at the time. So the WorkLife wallet is a way for companies to essentially meet the unexpected care costs of their employees without having to, figure out ways down the line. And I say that because a lot of time when I don't know if you remember when we had Roe v. Wade, and a lot of companies came out and said, we're going to give $1,000 if you want to go for abortion care. We're going to give $1,000. Yeah. Well, guess what? Now you have to go to your manager and let your manager know that, hi, I'm getting an abortion.
Yes.
I'm here. But guess what? If you have the WorkLife wallet, all we need to do is top the WorkLife wallet with $1,000, right? And what we've done is automatically link your debit card whenever you go to, whether you go to CVS and you pick up a diaper for your child and you're like, you know what? I thought my child was already potty trained and now I have to buy more diapers and I didn't budget for that. That can be one of my WorkLife expenses, right? We automatically pull that into our dashboard and we ask you, do you want this reimbursed? And if you say yes, automatically you're reimbursed for that money. And the money comes directly back into your debit card.
That's great.
And so we've, we're excited about the WorkLife wallet. I think it's something that a lot of companies are now waking up to because quite frankly, they are throwing a lot of money away. Some companies have 40 benefits and only 5.5% of employees are utilizing those benefits. It's a waste. And we have huge problems.
Blessing Adesiyan, thank you for being my guest on the Company of Dads podcast. One last question for you, which I'm going to take from we talked about in the podcast from my daughter, Phoebe. If you think about, in the five and a half years that you've run this company, what is the biggest problem that is still unsolved? And what are some of the problems that you've seen a lot of movement on and you're most optimistic about?
Absolutely. I think that the biggest problem obviously is childcare. It's still the sore thumb that somehow we haven't been able to get right as a nation. And I think that it's honestly at this point not a woman's issue, but it's an economic problem for all of us because we have to solve for childcare. More and more women are holding degrees in corporate America. There's no rolling back, that progress. And so what we're going to find is that even men are going to take time off the workforce to care for their kids. We're seeing a lot of men step into care. We're seeing more and more of men, saying, this is an issue for all of us. This isn't about women anymore. We need to fix this. when we don't have childcare, my husband he is running Elter Skelter as well. I don't, I'm sure it's the same thing in your household. And so for us, I think that, childcare is a big issue that needs to be solved. I think we have a childcare cliff that is, we're going to go off a cliff. I think it's end of September, because some of the money that the Biden administration had put in place to support the childcare centers are going to run out. So we're going to see more and more breakdown in childcare. So that is something that I'm not looking forward to. And I think in terms of positive, I think I see more companies actually interested in the conversation now more than ever. They may not have the budget. They may not be able to fly their people in, but I think they understand now that if they don't step up care, that they are going to be on the losing end, because people are no longer compromising the quality of their lives for their job, which means I'm not going to, break my back and then get on the laptop and work. So companies will have no other choice than to step up care. And we're seeing more and more of that. And I think that gets me excited. We're seeing more well-being programs, more wellness programs within organizations. And I think that is something that we're going to continue to see more of.
Perfect place to end. Thank you again, Blessing Adesiyan, founder and CEO of MH WorkLife.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Company of Dads podcast. I also want to thank the people who make this podcast and everything else that we do at the Company of Dads possible. Helder Mira, who is our audio producer. Lindsay Decker, who handles all of our social media. Terry Brennan, who's helping us with the newsletter and audience acquisition. Emily Servin, who is our web maestro. And of course, Evan Roosevelt, who is working side by side with me in many of the things that we do here at the Company of Dads. It's a great team, and we're just trying to bring you the best in fatherhood. Remember, the one-stop shop for everything is our newsletter, The Dad. Sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Thank you again for listening.